When I first drove through Riverside Pines, I thought I'd found heaven itself. The streets curved gently like a painted dream, lined with whispering maples and pastel-colored houses that smiled beneath the afternoon sun. I remember glancing at my daughter, Amelia, in the passenger seat, her little hands gripping her wheelchair's frame, her blue eyes glowing with hope. After years of hospitals and concrete apartments, this was supposed to be our new beginning, a place where she could heal, where we could finally breathe. The realtor's words still echoed in my mind. Safe, quiet, friendly community. The HOA takes care of everything. I should have known then that when someone says everything, it means they control everything. The first time I saw Marjorie Briggs, our HOA president, she was pruning roses in front of her yard, her golden hair pinned neatly beneath a sun hat, her smile polite but sharp. "Welcome to Riverside Pines," she said in a voice that carried command more than warmth. Her eyes flicked to Amelia's wheelchair, lingering a little too long before she added, "We do like to keep things orderly here." I laughed politely, not realizing that this was her warning. That night, as we unpacked boxes, I heard the faint hum of sprinklers and the distant buzz of Marjorie's security lights blinking like watchful eyes. By morning, a crisp envelope sat on our porch, our first notice. The letter was short. "Wheelchair ramp violates exterior design code. Must be removed within 10 days. My stomach dropped. I had spent every cent to make this house accessible, and within hours of moving in, someone wanted to strip that away. When I knocked on Marjorie's door to explain, she answered with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Rules keep us civilized," she said sweetly, as if quoting scripture. "I'm sure you understand." Behind her, a wall of HOA plaques gleamed, each one engraved with her name. As days passed, she became a shadow stitched into our routine. Every morning, I'd catch her standing by her window, writing something on her clipboard whenever Amelia rolled down the driveway. One afternoon, I saw her snapping photos of our mailbox. "Routine inspection," she said. "Your grass height exceeds community standards." I wanted to shout to tell her that I didn't move here for this, but I saw Amelia watching from the porch, her face small and unsure. So I swallowed my anger and smiled instead. But Marjorie didn't stop. A few days later, I noticed water stains along the basement wall while unpacking the last of our boxes. It smelled damp, faintly metallic. I called the HOA maintenance line, but Marjorie herself returned my call. "The drainage issue is your responsibility," she said curtly. "We expect homeowners to maintain proper waterproofing." I tried explaining that the water seemed to come from the shared side of the foundation, but she cut me off. "That area floods every few years," she said, almost proudly. "Nature has a way of cleansing what doesn't belong." Her words stuck with me long after I hung up. That night, I went down to the basement again, flashlight in hand. The water stain had spread wider, like a dark bruise crawling up the wall. Somewhere beyond that wall, I thought I heard a faint dripping, steady, rhythmic, alive. I turned off the light, listening to the house breathe. Upstairs, thunder rolled softly in the distance, and for the first time, Riverside Pines didn't feel safe. Over the next week, Marjorie's behavior grew stranger. She'd wave to Amelia one moment, then glare at her the next. She left helpful notes about how wheelchair tires left mud tracks on the sidewalk or how special accommodations could lower property values. I tried reporting her to the HOA board, but she was the board, chairwoman, treasurer, and secretary all rolled into one. Every complaint disappeared like water down a drain. One Saturday morning, while watering our small garden, I noticed Amelia talking to someone across the fence. My heart froze when I saw it was Marjorie, crouched low, her smile oddly fixed. I stepped closer, and she straightened abruptly, waving. "We were just chatting," she said. Amelia looked pale. Later that evening, when I asked what Marjorie had said, she hesitated before whispering. She told me the water talks to her. My blood ran cold. "What do you mean, honey?" I asked gently. She said, Amelia continued, her voice trembling, that the house remembers every storm, and that it likes to take back what it loses. I laughed it off, told her not to worry, but that night I couldn't sleep. Rain began tapping against the windows, slow and deliberate, and I thought about that damp smell in the basement, about Marjorie's cold stare, about the faint sound of dripping water that seemed closer now. The next morning, I woke to find our mailbox bent backward as if someone had kicked it. On top of it was a single sheet of paper, final warning. Noncompliance will result in penalties. No signature, but I didn't need one. I stormed across the street, ready to confront her once and for all, but her house was silent. Curtains drawn, gate locked. Still, I could feel her watching. That afternoon, Amelia went missing for 10 minutes. I searched every room, every yard, my heart hammering so hard I could barely breathe. Then I heard a faint tapping coming from Marjorie's backyard. When I ran around the corner, there was Amelia, sitting in her wheelchair near Marjorie's fence, her face ghost white, her hands shaking. She said I shouldn't go in the basement, she whispered. She said it's already full. I looked at her, confused. Full of what? I asked. Amelia's eyes filled with tears. Water, she said softly, and something else. My skin crawled as I looked toward Marjorie's house. Through the blinds, I caught a glimpse of her silhouette, standing motionless in the window, staring back at us. Her lips moved slowly, deliberately, but no sound came out. The wind picked up, rattling the leaves, and somewhere deep beneath our feet, I thought I heard it again, the steady drip, drip, drip of something alive and waiting. I didn't know then that the basement Marjorie warned me about would soon become my daughter's watery prison. The storm rolled in like a living thing, heavy and violent, shaking the air before it even reached us. By dusk, the horizon had turned black, and lightning forked across the sky like cracks in a glass dome. I remember standing by the kitchen window, watching sheets of rain blur the world into gray, when the first tremor of fear crawled up my spine. The weatherman's voice on the radio warned of flash floods, power outages, and strong winds, but in Riverside Pines, the warnings always came too late. I moved quickly, filling sandbags, checking the sump pump, trying to keep the fear out of my voice as I told Amelia to stay upstairs. She smiled weakly, her tablet on her lap, pretending to be brave, though her fingers trembled. "It's just rain, right, Mom?" she asked. I nodded, but my throat was tight. The lights flickered, then went out completely, plunging the house into darkness. Somewhere outside, I heard Marjorie's voice calling out to someone, sharp, commanding, followed by the sound of metal scraping pavement. I grabbed a flashlight and peered through the rain-spattered glass. Through the blur, I saw her dragging something heavy toward the street. The large green trash bins, stacked one against another, forming a barricade near the drainage outlet. The realization hit me like a bolt. She was blocking the only path for the runoff to escape. "Marjorie!" I yelled, throwing open the door. The wind tore my words away, but she turned her head slowly, her expression unreadable in the stormlight. "We follow rules here," she shouted back, her voice swallowed by thunder. "You should have fixed your foundation when I told you to." Before I could respond, she turned and disappeared into the sheets of rain. Panic clawed at my chest. I needed to move the bins, clear the drain. But the moment I stepped outside, water rushed over my boots. It was already rising. I fought my way through the downpour, pulling the bins aside one by one, rain battering my face, mud sucking at my shoes. The air reeked of wet earth and something faintly chemical. When I finally cleared the last bin, I realized how fast the water was flowing toward my house, slamming into the foundation with a sickening force. I stumbled back inside, soaked to the bone, yelling for Amelia. No answer. My stomach dropped. "Amelia!" I shouted again, running up the stairs, flashlight beam darting across the walls. Her wheelchair sat empty near the living room window, her tablet still glowing faintly on the couch. "No, no, no," I whispered, running from room to room. Then I heard it, a faint thud from below. The basement. I sprinted toward the door, heart hammering so hard it hurt. The air felt colder there, and when I reached for the handle, it wouldn't budge. It was locked. Amelia! I screamed, slamming my shoulder into the door. From behind it came a muffled cry, weak, terrified. Mom, I can't get out. The sound of water gushing echoed behind her voice. I grabbed the handle and pulled with everything I had, but it was useless. The lock had been sealed tight. I ran to the toolbox, grabbed a hammer, and started beating at the hinges, splinters flying, my own voice hoarse from screaming her name. Between blows, I thought I heard footsteps outside the house, soft, deliberate, too calm for this chaos. I ran to the window and saw her again, Marjorie standing under her black umbrella at the edge of my porch, perfectly still. Lightning flashed, illuminating her face, pale and composed, her lips curved into something between a smile and a sneer. Help me! I shouted through the glass. My daughter's inside. She tilted her head, as if considering it, then said something I'll never forget. The water will take what it's owed. Then she turned and walked away, her umbrella bobbing through the rain like a dark omen. I screamed until my voice broke. Back at the door, I swung the hammer until my arms felt like lead. Wood cracked. The house groaned. From behind the door came a desperate sound, Amelia gasping for breath. It's cold, Mom, it's so cold. I hit harder, faster, tears mixing with rain dripping down from the ceiling. Hold on, baby. Please hold on. Then a burst, the door frame splintered, water exploded outward, knocking me backward. Freezing, murky water surged into the hallway, dragging boxes, papers, everything in its path. I fought against it, wading through to reach her. But the current was relentless. The flashlight slipped from my hand, plunging us into total darkness. I called her name again and again, following her faint sobs through the rising tide. My fingers brushed against something, her hand. I grabbed it, pulling with every ounce of strength I had, but something held her back. It's stuck, she cried. My wheel, it's caught. I dove under, prying at the jammed frame of her chair, lungs screaming for air, until finally it came loose. Together we stumbled toward the stairs, but the water was already waist-high and climbing. Every step felt like wading through cement. And then another sound, a loud metallic click from above. I looked up and my heart froze. The door had swung shut again. Locked. No. I screamed, pounding my fists against the wood. Help! Somebody help us. The thunder outside swallowed my voice. Amelia clung to me, shaking violently, her lips blue. I tried ramming the door over and over, but it held fast. Through the gap near the floor, I saw movement. Shoes, black rain boots, standing still, watching. Marjorie. I screamed, choking on tears. You're killing her. For a long moment, there was only silence. Then through the storm's roar came her calm voice, muffled but clear. I told you to keep your house dry. The footsteps retreated. I pressed my forehead to the door, sobbing, helpless. The water rose to my chest, icy and merciless. Every breath came with a shudder. Mom, Amelia whispered, I don't want to go under. You won't, I promised, even as I felt the truth closing in around us. Somewhere beneath the surface, I thought I heard it again, the faint, rhythmic dripping that had haunted me since we moved in, now louder, faster, almost laughing. And just as my strength began to fade, a distant crash shook the whole house. A window, giving way upstairs, letting the storm in. For a heartbeat, the pressure shifted, and the door trembled on its hinges. I braced myself, ready to try one last time, but before I could move, the floor beneath us groaned, cracking open like a wound. The current pulled hard, sucking us toward the darkness below. I clung to Amelia's arm, refusing to let go. The world tilted, filled with water, with screams, with thunder. And as the light vanished completely, all I could hear was her small, breaking voice calling my name, and the storm swallowing everything else. When I opened my eyes, Everything was white, the ceiling, the walls, the sheets clinging to my skin. The storm's roar had vanished, replaced by the sterile hum of machines and the soft beep of a monitor keeping time with my heartbeat. My first thought was Amelia. I bolted upright, ignoring the pain screaming through my body, and saw her in the next bed, pale, still, a tangle of tubes and wires running from her arms. Her chest rose and fell in shallow rhythm, her lips ghostly. "She's stable," a nurse whispered when she saw me panic. "You both were lucky. Firefighters found you floating near the basement stairs when the current broke through the foundation." I wanted to thank her, to cry, but my throat refused to form words. My mind kept replaying flashes, the door slamming shut, Marjorie's boots outside, the way her voice had sounded so calm while my daughter was drowning. A detective came later, a man named Officer Raymond Cole, notebook in hand, his tone clipped, but not unkind. "The neighbor says she called for help when she saw your basement flooding," he said. "Claims she even tried breaking in, but the current was too strong." I stared at him, disbelief twisting my stomach. "She locked us in?" I whispered. "She did this." But his eyes flicked to his notes, uncertain. "No proof of that yet," he said. "No visible lock damage, no witnesses." The words felt like ice water poured down my spine. Marjorie was going to get away with it, again. When I was discharged 2 days later, the neighborhood looked like a battlefield. Trees lay uprooted, fences torn apart, driveways buried under mud. But Marjorie's yard? Immaculate. Her roses stood perfectly untouched, trimmed and bright, as if the storm had bowed to her will. As I helped Amelia inside, neighbors waved sympathetically, but their eyes darted away when I mentioned her name. Fear. She had them all afraid. That night, while Amelia slept in her room, I went down to the basement. The air was thick with mold and rot. Mud streaked the walls, and the foundation gaped open like a scar. My flashlight beam caught something glinting under the waterline, a brass key, half buried in debris. I picked it up, turning it over. It wasn't mine. Stamped into the side were the words, HOA Utility Access. My pulse quickened. I wiped the mud from the walls, tracing the outline of what looked like an old door sealed with concrete long ago. The edges were smooth, deliberate, not storm damage. Someone had closed this up intentionally. I pried at it with a crowbar until part of the concrete gave way, revealing rusted hinges behind it. On impulse, I used the key on a small corroded lock embedded at the top. To my shock, it turned. The slab shifted slightly, and a rush of foul, stagnant air poured out, damp, earthy, metallic. I coughed, stumbling backward. My flashlight flickered, then caught something carved into the exposed wall inside. Property of HOA Marjorie Briggs, President 2002. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. That was over 20 years ago, long before we'd moved in. I forced the door wider, just enough to shine the light inside, and what I saw made my knees buckle. A child's tricycle, rusted and half submerged. A small, decayed teddy bear wedged between stones. And on the far wall, faint and water-stained, a photograph nailed into the concrete. A woman holding a young boy with blonde hair and pale blue eyes. Marjorie and her son. My flashlight flickered again, and I saw it, another shape beneath the surface, skeletal, half-hidden under layers of silt. I staggered back, gasping. My hands trembled so badly, I dropped the light. The truth hit me like a second flood. This basement had drowned before. Someone had died here. Her son had died here. And she'd buried the memory under concrete and HOA rules. Every complaint, every threat, every cruel word toward Amelia, it wasn't just hatred. It was projection, a punishment born from guilt she couldn't face. I ran upstairs and called Officer Cole. When he arrived, I led him down and pointed to the opening. His face went pale as he stepped closer. "We'll have forensics come in," he said quietly. "You did the right thing." But even as he spoke, I could see doubt flickering behind his eyes. That night, while waiting for them to return, I sat by Amelia's bed, brushing damp hair from her forehead. "You're safe now," I whispered. But even as I said it, I didn't believe it. Because deep down, I knew Marjorie wouldn't rest. And I was right. Around midnight, I woke to the sound of our front door creaking open. I froze. The faint shuffle of footsteps moved across the living room floor. I slipped out of bed, heart hammering, and grabbed the flashlight. The beam caught the edge of a shadow by the hallway, a figure standing perfectly still. "Who's there?" I whispered. The figure moved closer, slow and deliberate, until the light found her face. Marjorie. Her hair hung damp, eyes glassy and distant. "You shouldn't have gone down there," she said softly. "That place was sealed for a reason." "You killed him," I said, my voice shaking. "You killed your son." Her lips trembled, then curled into a broken smile. "The water took him," she said. "It takes what it wants. I try to make peace with it." Her gaze shifted toward Amelia's door. She looks so much like him when she cries. Something inside me snapped. I lunged forward, pushing her back toward the doorway, shouting for her to leave. For a second, her composure cracked, fear flashing across her face. Then she turned and ran into the night, vanishing into the rain. Minutes later, red and blue lights painted the street as police swarmed the house. They searched, but she was gone. In the following days, forensics confirmed what I'd found. The remains in the basement belonged to a child who died nearly 2 decades ago. Officially, they listed it as an accidental drowning the same year heavy floods hit Riverside Pines. But the old HOA meeting records told a different story. Complaints of faulty drainage ignored, money missing from a maintenance fund, and Marjorie's name on every signed report. She had known the danger. She just buried it literally and figuratively. I sat in the hospital waiting room again, reading through the faded pages of those reports, and realized something that made my stomach. The morning of the HOA meeting arrived like the calm before an execution, still, humid, and heavy with expectation. For weeks, I'd prepared every piece of evidence. The video footage from a neighbor's camera showing Marjorie near our basement during the storm, the old HOA reports proving her cover-ups, and the forensics confirmation of her son's remains. I told no one what I planned, not even Officer Cole. I wanted her to face her downfall, surrounded by the very people she'd ruled with fear. As Amelia sat beside me in her wheelchair, her small hand clutching mine, the meeting hall filled slowly with the neighbors who'd once worshipped Marjorie's authority. They greeted her with nervous smiles, whispering as she stood at the front, immaculate as ever in her white blazer, her nameplate gleaming under the fluorescent lights. "Thank you all for coming," she began smoothly, her voice steady despite the tension simmering in the room. "We're here to discuss the unfortunate flooding incident and community safety improvements moving forward." Her eyes met mine briefly, cold and calculating. I stood. "Before we talk about safety," I said, my voice trembling at first, "let's talk about the truth." The room fell silent. I walked to the projector and plugged in my laptop. The lights dimmed, and the footage flickered onto the screen, the storm raging, water crashing through the yard, and there she was, Marjorie standing in the rain, pulling the bins over the drainage outlet, watching my house flood. A gasp rippled through the crowd. Then came the next clip, her silhouette at my basement door, the unmistakable click of the lock, and my muffled screams from the other side. When the lights came back on, every face in the room had turned toward her. "That's not me," she said quickly, her mask beginning to crack. "That could be anyone. It's you, Marjorie." I cut in, my voice steady now. "And this isn't the first time." I held up the folder of documents and walked forward. 20 years ago, your son drowned in the same basement because you ignored the drainage warnings. You buried the report, sealed the site, and called it an accident. You spent 2 decades pretending to protect this neighborhood when all you did was build your own shrine of guilt. She backed away, shaking her head, her perfect composure unraveling. "No," she whispered, "you don't understand. The water, it took him. It takes what it wants." The neighbors murmured, confused and horrified. Officer Cole, standing at the back of the room, stepped forward. "Marjorie Briggs," he said quietly, "we've confirmed the remains in the basement belong to your son, Matthew Briggs. We also have evidence you falsified HOA documents to hide it. You need to come with us." Her eyes darted wildly, scanning the room for an ally, but there were none left. Even the old board members she'd manipulated stared at her with disgust. I was protecting us, she screamed suddenly. This community only exists because I kept the water at bay. If you open the truth, you'll unleash it again. She turned toward me, trembling, her voice breaking. You think you can control it, don't you? But you can't. It remembers. Before anyone could move, she bolted for the exit, slamming the doors open and running into the rain that had started again outside. I chased after her, shouting for Cole, but she was fast, her white jacket flashing like lightning against the gray sky. She ran straight toward her house, toward the basement that had swallowed her past. I followed, heart pounding, Amelia calling my name behind me. By the time I reached her driveway, she was already inside, the door swinging wide. The sound of rushing water met me as I entered, stronger than it should have been, like the storm itself had chosen this house. Marjorie! I yelled over the roar. She stood at the top of the basement stairs, hair soaked, eyes wide with something beyond fear. He's still down there, she said softly. He never left me. Then she descended, one slow step at a time. I hesitated, the floor trembling beneath my feet. Cole and two officers rushed in behind me, shouting for her to stop, but it was too late. A deafening crack echoed through the house as the foundation gave way. The same wall I'd broken open weeks earlier. Water erupted upward, swallowing the staircase in a single violent surge. The officers pulled me back as the current tore through the hall, sweeping debris, furniture, and fragments of Marjorie's perfect life into chaos. When it finally stopped, the basement was gone, collapsed into a pit of muddy water. The officers searched for hours, but she was never found. Only her umbrella surfaced, drifting in slow circles before sinking again. Days passed, then weeks. The HOA dissolved. The neighbors moved away one by one, leaving the once proud community hollow and silent. I stayed long enough to rebuild what was left of our home, sealing the basement for good. We turned the yard into a small memorial garden, planting lilies in the same spot where the foundation cracked open. Amelia called it the Garden of Second Chances. She was walking again now, slowly, painfully, but with more strength than I'd ever seen in her. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the trees and rain began to fall softly, she stood by the flowers and whispered, "It's not angry anymore." I asked her what she meant, but she just smiled. "The water," she said, "it's quiet now." I looked up at the sky, feeling the first drops on my face, and for the first time, I didn't feel fear, just peace. The storm had taken everything it could, but it had also given something back. The truth, the strength to face it, and the freedom from the monster who'd ruled us all. As we turned to go inside, I glanced once more at the empty lot across the street where Marjorie's house used to stand. The wind shifted, carrying the faint scent of roses, and for a moment I thought I heard a voice, hers soft, regretful, almost human. I only wanted to keep it beautiful. Then the rain swallowed it, gentle and forgiving. And when the last light faded, I realized something that made my chest ache with both sorrow and relief. The storm hadn't just drowned her secrets, it had washed away her soul. The water remembers, she'd said, but maybe now, finally, it could forget.